They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes, when someone destroys everything you've built with your own hands, when they mock the calluses that built their comfortable life, when they betray 4 years of marriage for a corner office affair, sometimes living well isn't enough. Sometimes you have to watch them burn. I've always been proud of what I do for a living. My name is Jack Sullivan. I'm 35 years old, and I'm a union pipe fitter in commercial construction. While other men sit behind desks pushing papers, I work with my hands. 10-hour days in the blazing summer heat. Freezing winter mornings when the wind cuts through your jacket like a knife. I come home exhausted, my boots caked with mud, my hands stained with grease and calloused from years of honest work. But I've never been ashamed of it. Because every pipe I install, every joint I weld, every system I build, it keeps buildings running, keeps people comfortable, keeps the world functioning. That's real work. That's something you can point to and say, I built that? The house we live in? I bought it 3 years before I even met Vanessa. Saved every penny from my paychecks. Lived in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles for 2 years just to scrape together that down payment. When I finally got the keys, I walked through those empty rooms and felt something I'd never felt before. Ownership. Pride. This was mine. I built this life with my own 2 hands. Vanessa was different back then. God, she was so different. I met her at a coffee shop downtown 5 years ago. She was a marketing coordinator at some mid-sized firm, sitting alone with her laptop, typing furiously. Beautiful, sure, but it wasn't just that. She had this energy, this ambition that drew me in. When I finally worked up the courage to talk to her, she didn't look at my work boots with disgust. She didn't wrinkle her nose at the grease under my fingernails. She asked what I did, and when I told her, she smiled. That's incredible, she said warmly. You actually build things. Real things. She reached across the table and touched my hands. These rough, scarred hands that other women had recoiled from. These hands create something permanent every day, she continued. That's beautiful. I fell in love with her right there. We got married 4 years ago. Small wedding. Her parents didn't bother hiding their disappointment. Her father, Richard, a retired accountant, kept making passive-aggressive comments about blue-collar work and how Vanessa could do better. Her mother, Paula, just smiled tightly and asked pointed questions about my career plans and whether I'd ever consider advancing to management. But Vanessa defended me. She shut them down every time. Jack is the most hard-working man I've ever met, she'd tell them firmly. He owns his own house. He's stable, dependable, and he treats me like a queen. What more could I want? Those first 2 years of marriage were the best of my life. She'd pack my lunch every morning, kiss me goodbye at 5:30 a.m. when I left for work, tell me she was proud of me. When her co-workers asked about her husband, she'd beam and say proudly, he's in construction. Strong, dependable, and he built our whole life with his own hands. She used to brag about me. But something shifted over the past year. Vanessa got promoted to marketing specialist, started earning more money, started dressing sharper. Designer clothes, expensive shoes, jewelry I didn't recognize. She said it was important for her image at work, that she needed to look the part. That's when the comments started. Little things at first. Jack, you tracked mud through the kitchen again, she'd complain with increasing irritation. Your hands are always so dirty. Can you wash them before you touch anything? She'd snap. The guys from your crew talk so rough, she'd say with distaste. It's embarrassing when they call the house, I brushed it off. She was stressed from the new position, that's all. More responsibility meant more pressure. I could handle a few complaints about dirty boots. But then came the dinner party 6 months ago. She'd invited some colleagues over, marketing people, account managers, a couple executives. I cleaned up as best I could, put on my nicest shirt, tried to make conversation, but I could feel their eyes on me, the subtle condescension when they asked what I did. The polite nods followed by immediate subject changes. When one of them asked about my work, Vanessa jumped in before I could answer. Oh, Jack's just a construction worker, she said with a dismissive little laugh. Nothing too exciting. Just a construction worker. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I felt my face burn with humiliation as her colleagues nodded and moved on to discussing their office drama and corporate politics. I sat there in my own house, the house I bought, feeling like an outsider. On the drive to drop off her coworkers, the silence was suffocating. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Just a construction worker?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She sighed like I was being dramatic. "Jack, you don't understand. These people, they have degrees, careers, futures. You can't expect them to be impressed by manual labor." "Manual labor?" I replied, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "I make $70,000 a year. We live in a house I own. What exactly is the problem?" She stared out the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "The problem is you'll never be more than what you are." Those words hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into every corner of the car, into my lungs, into my blood. You'll never be more than what you are. I realized in that moment that something fundamental had changed. Vanessa didn't respect me anymore. Worse than that, she resented me. I wasn't the hard-working man who'd built a life anymore. I was an embarrassment, a limitation, a ceiling on her ambitions. When we got home that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me. The woman who used to kiss my calloused hands now couldn't stand the sight of them. The woman who used to brag about my work now introduced me like an apology. That's when I started noticing other things, little changes I'd been too trusting to see before. She'd started working late more often, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. She bought new perfume, something expensive and sultry that she'd never worn before. Her lingerie drawer had items I didn't recognize, pieces she never wore for me. She'd guard her phone like it contained state secrets, turning the screen away when I walked by, taking it with her to the bathroom. After 4 years of marriage, she'd suddenly put a password on it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Marriage had its ups and downs, right? People changed, grew apart, went through phases. Maybe this was just a rough patch. But paranoia doesn't explain why your wife suddenly password protects her phone after 4 years of leaving it unlocked on the counter. Paranoia doesn't explain new lingerie that you never see. Paranoia doesn't explain why she flinches when you touch her, like your hands are contaminated. As I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth, because if she was just going through a phase, we could work through it. But if she was doing what I suspected she was doing, then everything was about to change, and not in her favor. The next month was like living in a psychological thriller where I was both the detective and the victim. Every day brought new evidence that the woman I'd married was becoming someone I didn't recognize, or maybe revealing who she'd always been underneath. The late nights at the office became routine. "Big project," she'd say, barely looking up from her phone. "Presentation for the board." You know how it is. Except I didn't know how it was, because her company had never required this level of overtime before. Marketing specialists don't typically work until 9 p.m. 3 times a week. Her wardrobe underwent a complete transformation. Skirts that hugged her curves in ways that made me uncomfortable, not because she looked bad, but because she'd never dressed that provocatively for me. Blouses cut lower than anything she'd worn during our entire marriage. Makeup that took her an hour to apply each morning. "It's professional," she'd insist when I commented. Image matters in my industry. Professional? Right. Because marketing specialists need to look like they're heading to a nightclub to sell advertising campaigns. The worst part was how she talked to me. The small cruelties multiplied daily, each one designed to chip away at my confidence, my sense of worth. One evening, 3 weeks later, we were having dinner when she looked across the table with that expression I'd grown to hate, like she was studying an insect. "You know what's funny?" she asked, cutting her chicken with surgical precision. I looked up from my plate. "What's that?" "My co-workers' husbands are all professionals," she continued. "Lawyers, engineers, managers, executives, real careers." I set down my fork. And you know what you are?" she replied with a cold smile. "A laborer." The word hung between us like a slap. Not a skilled tradesman, not a union pipe fitter, not a man who built critical infrastructure. A laborer. "I'm the reason you have this roof over your head," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. She laughed, actually laughed. "Technically, you have a roof. I just live here." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there replaying every red flag, every moment I'd ignored my instincts, every sign I'd rationalized away. The late nights, the guarded phone, the new clothes. the way she recoiled from my touch like I was diseased. The next morning, I called Tommy from my crew. Tommy Rizzo had been through a brutal divorce 3 years earlier. His wife had cheated with his brother, his own brother, and taken him for everything she could. He'd learned the hard way that when you suspect something, you're usually right. "You remember your divorce?" I asked him during our lunch break. Tommy stopped chewing his sandwich and looked at me hard. "Every miserable second. Why?" I hesitated, then decided to trust him. "You hired a private investigator, right?" Tommy's expression darkened. "Best money I ever spent. Caught the witch red-handed with my piece of brother in a motel room. Without that evidence, she would have taken the house, the kids, everything." He wiped his hands on a napkin. "You think Vanessa's cheating?" The word felt like swallowing glass. "I think so." Tommy pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts. Raymond Cross, ex-cop, professional, discreet. "He'll get you what you need." He sent me the contact. "But Jack, be prepared. When your gut tells you something's wrong, it usually is." 2 days later, I sat across from Raymond Cross in a diner on the other side of town. Mid-50s, gray hair, eyes that had seen too much. The kind of man who dealt in facts, not emotions. "So you think your wife is having an affair," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I know she is," I replied. "I just need proof." Raymond slid a contract across the table. "I'll tail her for 2 weeks. You'll get photos, timestamps, video if possible, everything documented. My rate is $200 a day plus expenses." He leaned back. "But I have to ask, are you sure you want to know?" "Because once you see certain things, you can't unsee them." I signed the contract without hesitation. "I need to know." The waiting was agony. For 5 days, I went to work, came home, made conversation with my wife, and pretended everything was normal while my phone buzzed with updates from Raymond. Day 1. Subject left office at 5:30 p.m., went directly home. No unusual activity. Day 2. Subject met with male colleague at upscale restaurant. Lunch lasted 2.5 hours. Physical contact observed, hand-touching, prolonged eye contact, photographing. Day 3, same male colleague. Coffee shop. Subject laughed frequently, leaned in close. Getting clearer photos. Day 5. Jackpot. Subject and male entered Regency Hotel together, 2:15 p.m. Got them kissing in elevator. They're in room 804. I was sitting in my truck at a construction site when that message came through. I stared at my phone screen, reading it over and over, waiting for the words to change. But they didn't. My wife was in a hotel room with another man. My hands shook as I typed back, "Get everything. Every photo, every detail." 3 hours later, subject leaving hotel with same male, holding hands. Multiple photos attached. Subject appears disheveled. Male adjusted clothing in parking lot. I opened the attachments with trembling fingers. There she was, my wife of 4 years, walking out of a hotel with a man I didn't recognize. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick smeared. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand in his, looking more relaxed and happy than I'd seen her in months. The man was older, maybe 45, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive suit. Confident, successful looking, everything I apparently wasn't. I zoomed in on one photo where he was adjusting his tie. His work ID was visible, clipped to his jacket pocket. Craig Holloway, Senior Marketing Director. Her boss. My vision blurred. My chest felt like someone had driven a stake through it. I wanted to drive straight to that hotel, find them, drag them both into the parking lot, and Raymond's voice echoed in my head. "Don't tip your hand." Evidence means leverage. Emotion means losing. I closed my phone, gripped the steering wheel, and forced myself to breathe. In and out. In and out. She had no idea I knew. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Because if she wanted to destroy our marriage, I was going to make damn sure she destroyed herself in the process. The investigation continued for another week. Raymond documented everything. Restaurant dates, hotel visits, intimate moments in parking lots. My wife and her boss had been carrying on for at least 2 months, probably longer. The photos told the whole story. They weren't just having intimacy, they were having a relationship. Laughing together, holding hands, sharing intimate conversations. She looked at him the way she used to look at me, back when she respected the man I was instead of resenting me for what I wasn't. By the end of 2 weeks, I had a complete dossier of my wife's affair. Dozens of photos, video footage, timestamps, hotel receipts. Raymond had even managed to get audio of them in a restaurant, discussing how Jack would never understand and how she deserved better than a construction worker. That last recording was the final nail in the coffin, not because it proved she was cheating, I already knew that, but because it proved she had no remorse, no guilt, no intention of stopping. She thought she was smarter than me, thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too busy with my manual labor to notice what was happening right under my nose. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. I spent the following week quietly consulting a divorce attorney, documenting our assets and preparing my strategy. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my behavior. I played the role of the oblivious husband while building an airtight case. The plan was simple. Let her think she was in control. Let her believe she could manipulate me into a civil divorce where she got half of everything I'd worked for. Let her dig her own grave deeper and deeper, because when the time came for consequences, I wanted her fall to be catastrophic. 2 weeks after receiving Raymond's final report, I was sitting on my couch watching Monday Night Football when I heard Vanessa's key in the door. The clock read 6 p.m., early for her lately, which immediately put me on alert. But she wasn't alone. The front door opened, and Vanessa walked in, followed by a man I recognized from the surveillance photos. Tall, mid-40s, expensive charcoal suit, silver cufflinks. Craig Holloway. The confidence radiating from him was almost nauseating, the kind of arrogance that comes from never facing real consequences for your actions. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. I muted the TV and looked up as if this was a perfectly normal evening. "Jack," Vanessa said, her voice artificially bright and rehearsed. "This is Craig, my boss. We need to talk." I gestured toward the chairs across from the couch. "Sure, sit down. Either of you want a beer?" Craig chuckled, clearly surprised by my calm reaction. "You know what? Sure. Why not?" I walked to the kitchen, opened 3 bottles of beer, and returned to the living room. My hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I handed them each a bottle and sat back down. "So," I said, taking a sip, "what's on your mind?" Vanessa launched into what was obviously a prepared speech. She'd done a lot of thinking about our marriage. She'd grown as a person and realized we wanted different things. She'd found someone who makes her happy and thought it would be best if we got divorced. "But," she continued, her tone becoming almost patronizing, "there's no reason this has to be ugly. We're adults. We can handle this civilly." Craig leaned back in my chair, legs spread wide, completely comfortable in my living room. "Exactly. No hard feelings, man. These things happen." He gestured vaguely with his beer bottle. "Sometimes people just grow apart. Vanessa deserves someone who can match her ambition, you know? Someone who can give her the life she wants." I took another sip of beer. "Go on. I mean, no offense," Craig continued, warming to his subject, "but construction work isn't exactly a career with upward mobility. Vanessa needs a partner, not a—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Not someone whose potential is already maxed out." Vanessa squeezed Craig's hand, beaming at him like he'd just delivered the Gettysburg Address. "Exactly. You understand completely." I set my beer down on the coffee table and stood up. "Before we agree to anything, I want you both to see something." I walked to the kitchen and returned with a thick manila envelope I'd prepared that morning. I dropped it on the coffee table, and photos spilled out across the surface like playing cards. Vanessa and Craig kissing in the hotel elevator. Vanessa and Craig holding hands outside the Regency Hotel. Vanessa and Craig in intimate conversation at Giuseppe's restaurant. Vanessa and Craig entering room 804. Vanessa and Craig leaving the hotel, her hair disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. The blood drained from Vanessa's face. Craig's confident smirk vanished completely. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago," I said, my voice ice-cold and matter-of-fact. "Professional surveillance, professional documentation. I've got photos, videos, timestamps, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, everything." Vanessa started to stammer. "Jack, wait, this isn't what it—" I cut her off. "I also have audio recordings of your conversations, including the one where you called me just a dumb construction worker and said I'd never amount to anything. Craig tried to stand up, his face flushed. "Now listen here." "Sit down," I said quietly, but something in my tone made him sink back into the chair. I pulled out my phone and showed them both an email draft. "This morning I sent copies of everything to your company's Human Resources Department, Craig. Relationships between supervisors and subordinates violate your company's code of conduct. The investigation starts tomorrow." Vanessa's eyes went wide with panic. "Jack, you can't—" "I already did," I replied, scrolling to another email. "I also sent copies to your wife, Craig, Mrs. Patricia Holloway, 1247 Elm Street. Married 22 years, 2 kids in college. She was very interested to see how her husband spends his lunch breaks." Craig's face turned gray. "You son of a—" I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." I pulled out another set of documents. "Divorce papers. Already filed. With this evidence, adultery is proven. In this state, that means you get nothing, Vanessa. No house, no savings, no alimony, nothing." Vanessa started crying, mascara running down her cheeks. "Jack, please. I made a mistake." "I'm sorry." "I'll end it right now, I swear." I looked at Craig, who was staring at the photos with the expression of a man watching his life implode in real time. "You said I'd never amount to anything," I told him. "You said Vanessa deserved someone on her level." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well, congratulations. You're about to find out exactly what your level is." I pulled out my phone and sent a text message. 30 seconds later, the front door opened. Tommy, Paulie, Ricky, and Marco walked into my living room. 4 men who'd spent their lives working with their hands, building things, solving problems. 4 men with calloused knuckles and no patience for disrespect. Vanessa's breathing became rapid and shallow. Craig tried to stand again, but Tommy stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. "I wouldn't," Tommy said quietly. I looked at Craig, then at Vanessa. "See, here's the thing about us construction workers. We believe in solving problems directly. And right now, you two are a problem." Craig's voice cracked slightly. "Look, we can work this out." "Work it out?" Marco laughed, cracking his knuckles. "You mean like how you worked out screwing this man's wife in his own town?" Ricky stepped closer to Craig. "In hotels he's probably paying for with his credit cards?" Paulie shook his head in disgust. "Making him look like a fool while you disrespected everything he built?" I stood up, walked over to Vanessa, and looked down at her. "You wanted someone on your level? Someone who could give you the life you deserve?" I gestured toward Craig. "There he is. Both of you about to lose your jobs, your reputations, your futures. Sounds like a perfect match." Tommy grabbed Craig by the arm and hauled him to his feet. "Time to go, Romeo." Craig tried to resist, but these weren't corporate executives who solved problems with strongly worded emails. These were men who moved steel beams and laid concrete foundations. They didn't negotiate. They acted. Craig never had a chance. The moment Tommy and Paulie grabbed his arms, all that corporate confidence evaporated like steam. He tried to say something, probably another attempt at negotiation or intimidation, but Ricky's fist drove into his stomach with the precision of a man who'd been in more than his share of fights. Craig doubled over, gasping. The expensive air knocked out of his expensive lungs. "That's for disrespecting Jack in his own house," Ricky said calmly. Marco followed up with a sharp uppercut to Craig's ribs. The crack echoed through the room like a gunshot. Craig's face went white as the pain hit him. "That's for thinking you're better than honest work," Marco added. They dragged him toward the front door, delivering calculated punches along the way. These weren't wild swings thrown in anger. These were deliberate, controlled strikes from men who knew exactly how to inflict maximum pain without causing permanent damage. Gut shots that doubled him over. Kidney punches that made him gasp. A hard shot to the jaw that split his lip and sent blood spattering across his pristine white shirt. "Stop, please, we can work this out." Craig wheezed, but his protest only seemed to motivate them further. Tommy drove his knee into Craig's solar plexus. "Work what out? You screwing another man's wife?" Paulie slammed his fist into Craig's shoulder, spinning him around. "Calling him a laborer like it's something to be ashamed of?" They threw him out the front door like he was a bag of garbage. Craig hit the lawn hard, rolling, trying to protect himself as they followed him outside. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'll never see her again." Craig's voice was desperate now, all traces of arrogance gone. Ricky grabbed him by his expensive suit jacket and hauled him upright, just long enough to drive another fist into his ribs. "You're sorry? You're sorry?" Marco kicked him in the stomach, sending him sprawling again. "You're sorry you got caught." They continued the beating on my front lawn, methodical and thorough. Craig's suit was torn, his face bloody, his perfect hair disheveled. He curled into a ball, whimpering, no longer the confident executive who'd walked into my house an hour ago. Inside, Vanessa was screaming, trying to run past me to help him. I caught her arm and held her back. "Let me go! You're going to kill him!" she cried. "No," I said quietly. "They're just teaching him a lesson." She spun around, mascara streaming down her face, eyes wild with panic. "Jack, please! Stop this! I'm sorry! I made a mistake! I'll change. I swear to God I'll change." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd shared my bed for 4 years, who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd thrown it all away for a promotion and a man who saw her as nothing more than an office conquest. "You had your chance to change," I replied. "You chose this." Through the window, I watched my crew finish their work. Craig was a broken mess on the grass, barely conscious, his expensive clothes ruined, his face swollen and bloody. They stood over him for a moment, making sure the lesson had been learned, then walked back toward the house. Tommy paused at the front door and looked back at Craig. "If we see you near this house again, near Jack's wife again, near Jack at all, we'll finish what we started. Understand?" Craig managed a weak nod. The crew came back inside, breathing hard but satisfied. Ricky was flexing his knuckles. Paulie was wiping blood off his hands with a napkin. Marco cracked his neck and grinned. "Problem solved," Tommy announced. I turned back to Vanessa, who was sobbing uncontrollably. "Your turn." "Jack, no, please, I live here too. This is my home," she pleaded. "No," I said, my voice flat and final. "It's my home. My name on the deed, my down payment, my mortgage payments. You're just someone who lived here for a while." Marco opened the front door. I grabbed Vanessa's arm and guided her toward it. "I have nowhere to go," she cried. "You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't good enough for you," I answered. I pushed her out onto the porch. She stumbled, catching herself on the railing, her heels clicking on the wooden steps. "Jack, please. I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you," she sobbed. I looked down at her, this woman who'd humiliated me, betrayed me, tried to steal everything I'd built. "No, you don't. You love what I provided. There's a difference." I slammed the door. Through the window, I watched Vanessa help Craig to his feet. Both of them were broken, physically, emotionally, financially. Craig's face was a mess of bruises and blood, his suit torn beyond repair. Vanessa's perfect makeup was ruined, her corporate image shattered. They limped toward Craig's BMW, two people who'd thought they were untouchable, now reduced to nursing their wounds in a hotel parking lot. I turned back to my crew. They were standing in my living room, drinking the beers Craig and Vanessa had abandoned, calm and satisfied. "Thanks, boys," I said. Tommy clapped me on the shoulder. "That's what family does, Jack. We look out for each other." Paulie raised his bottle. "You did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different." Ricky nodded toward the door. "They won't be bothering you again," Marco grinned. "And if they do, they know where to find us." We sat on my couch, drinking in comfortable silence. The TV was still on, the game still playing, but I wasn't watching anymore. I was looking around my house, seeing it clearly for the first time in months. Clean, quiet, free. "What now?" Marco asked. I leaned back, took a long drink of beer, and smiled. "Now I move on. Divorce gets finalized. I keep everything I worked for, and I never look back." Tommy raised his bottle. "To brothers who have your back." We all clinked bottles, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. This was about standing up for yourself when someone tries to tear you down. This was about showing people that actions have consequences, even when they think they're untouchable. Vanessa and Craig had gambled that I was too weak, too stupid, too trusting to fight back. They'd lost that bet completely. I thought I'd feel guilty afterward. I thought I'd question whether I'd gone too far, been too harsh, let my anger control me. But I didn't feel guilty at all. Because sometimes, justice isn't about being the bigger person. Sometimes it's about making sure the people who betrayed you understand exactly what they've lost. And Vanessa was about to understand that lesson better than she ever imagined. 3 months later, I'm sitting on my back porch with a beer in my hand, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. The house is quiet, peaceful in a way it hasn't been for over a year. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no wondering what cruel comment will come next. The divorce was finalized last week. Raymond's evidence was overwhelming. Adultery proven beyond any doubt. Vanessa's claims to marital assets obliterated. I kept the house, the savings account, my truck, my tools, everything I'd worked for. Vanessa walked away with her personal belongings and a court order prohibiting her from contacting me. She tried, of course. Called, texted, showed up at my job site twice before the restraining order. Always the same desperate script. She was sorry, she'd made a mistake, she wanted to work things out. But you can't unring that bell. You can't take back years of disrespect and betrayal with a few tears and empty promises. The investigation at her company moved swiftly. Corporate America doesn't tolerate scandals, especially when they involve supervisor-subordinate relationships and documented evidence of misconduct. Both Vanessa and Craig were terminated within 2 weeks of the HR report. Craig's fall was particularly spectacular. 20 years with the company, a reputation as a rising executive gone overnight. Word spread fast in their industry. Other firms wouldn't touch him. His wife, Patricia, filed for divorce immediately, taking their house, their savings, custody of their kids. Last I heard, he'd relocated to another state, taken a mid-level position at half his previous salary, starting over at 45 with nothing but debt and a ruined reputation. But it's Vanessa's downfall that gives me the deepest satisfaction. She moved back in with her parents, Richard and Paula Hart, in their suburban tract house. The same parents who'd looked down on me for being a mere construction worker. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Her father, the retired accountant who'd spent 4 years making passive-aggressive comments about my career, had no sympathy for his daughter's situation. "You cheated on a good man," he told her coldly during one of their arguments that the neighbors reported. "A man who owned his own home, who treated you well, who was faithful and hard-working. And you threw it away for what? A promotion? An ego boost?" Her mother was even harsher. "You have 1 month to find somewhere else to live. We're not enabling your poor choices." Vanessa tried to find work in marketing, but the industry is smaller than people think. Word travels fast about affairs, HR violations, and terminations for cause. Nobody wanted to hire someone with that kind of baggage. She ended up taking a job at a department store. Minimum wage, folding clothes, dealing with difficult customers. The woman who'd looked down on my manual labor was now working retail, struggling to make rent on a studio apartment across town. Her social media disappeared completely. Her old co-workers avoided her. The life she'd built, the reputation she'd cultivated, the future she'd planned. All of it crumbled because she couldn't resist the temptation to betray everything she'd promised to honor. She tried reaching out to me once, about 2 months after the divorce was final. A text message that read, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Can we talk?" I read it, deleted it, and blocked her number. No response. No closure for her. She didn't deserve my forgiveness or my time. She tried reaching out to Craig too, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances. He never responded either. He was too busy trying to salvage his own shattered life to worry about the woman who'd helped destroy it. The last I heard, she was living alone in that studio apartment, working retail, no prospects for anything better. The woman who'd thought she deserved more than a construction worker had ended up with far less than she'd ever had with me. Meanwhile, my life has never been better. I got promoted to foreman last month, leading my own crew now, making more money, with a clear path to superintendent if I want it. The union threw me a party, complete with a cake that read, "Congratulations, Jack," in union blue frosting. I've been dating casually, nothing serious yet, but I'm open to it. Women who appreciate a man with calloused hands and honest work. Women who understand that character matters more than a college degree, that integrity trumps income level. Last Saturday, Tommy and the crew came over for dinner. We grilled steaks on the back patio, drank beer, told stories, laughed until our sides hurt. Real friendship. The kind built on loyalty and respect rather than social climbing and office politics. You ever regret it? Tommy asked me as we watched the sun set. I thought about it for a moment, really considered the question. Did I regret the investigation? The confrontation? The way we handled Craig? The complete destruction of my ex-wife's life? No, I answered finally. Not for a second. Good, Tommy replied, clinking his bottle against mine. Because you did what any real man would do. She disrespected you, betrayed you, tried to take everything you'd built. You stood your ground, Paulie raised his bottle. To Jack, a man who doesn't take from anyone. We all drank to that, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete contentment. Not happiness exactly, but something deeper. Peace, justice, the satisfaction that comes from standing up for yourself and winning. Because that's what this was really about. It wasn't just revenge, though the revenge was sweet. It was about proving that actions have consequences, that you can't destroy someone's life without facing repercussions. That respect isn't negotiable, and betrayal isn't forgiven just because someone says they're sorry. Vanessa thought she could humiliate me, discard me, replace me with someone better. She thought my blue-collar background made me weak, stupid, powerless. She learned the hard way that you don't disrespect a man who built everything with his own hands. Because when you tear him down, he'll make sure you have nothing left to stand on. I lean back in my chair, look at my house, and smile. The mortgage is in my name. The deed has my signature. Every improvement, every repair, every dollar of equity belongs to me. I built this life with honest work and determination. And when someone tried to take it from me, I fought back with everything I had. Some people might say I went too far, that I should have been the bigger person, taken the high road, shown mercy. But those people have never had their life's work dismissed as worthless. They've never been called just a laborer by the person who promised to love them. They've never watched someone they trusted destroy their marriage for a promotion and a cheap thrill. Real strength isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about standing up when someone tries to break you and making damn sure they never try again. Vanessa wanted a man on her level. She got exactly what she deserved.